All right, well, good evening. So we'll wait another hot minute and then we can get started. Welcome to our guest this evening. And Nicole,
Yes.
do we have
Sorry, I can't change my name on here for some reason. I
That's
am
okay.
Nicole.
I just wanted to ask, do we have any new information for this week?
I have one thing to present.
Okay. Our guest speakers are only available for like 20 minutes. So I'm wondering if you'd like to hang on or maybe you want to jump back on like around 7 or 7:15. What are your thoughts?
Sure, I'll hang on and then I'll see what my children are doing. I might hop off and come back.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure you knew about that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Good evening. So it is Tuesday, January 9th. This is the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust meeting. Welcome to everybody. We have a quorum this evening with our members, Mark Montanari, Bartlett Harvey, Sue Melander, Angus Michaels, and we have some guests with us this evening, and myself, Anna Houston, chair. So I know that a lot of our guests this evening are joining us via Zoom, and some have a shorter time frame with us than others. So what I had asked is if we could go ahead and have our guests talk about their thoughts in general terms, any advice that they could provide to us as we head into this whole new realm of trying to figure out what to do with our antique farmhouse known as Durkee Farm. So if I could just introduce each or have each person who is a guest introduce themselves. Let's see, Mark with MAPC.
Good evening. My name is Mark Rasicott. I'm the Director of the Land Use Department at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And with me tonight is Alexis Smith, who's a Principal Planner in the Housing Division of the Land Use Department of MAPC.
Terrific. Hi, Alexis. Thank you for joining us. And is there anyone else here from MAPC? Nope. Okay. And then we also have Stephanie Peterson from Metro West. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. And Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself with any other comments?
Sure. I am Stephanie Peterson, Affordable Housing Programs Manager with Metro West Collaborative Development in Newton. Some of you may have seen me before on a Zoom meeting in conjunction with our work with the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. In fact, I've been working with that and with Marin for about the past 3 years. I'm also here tonight with Caitlin Madden. She's the Executive Director of Metro West CD.
Okay, great. And then I see that we have two other folks, Adam and Mel, which I don't recognize.
Hi, Anna. This is Mary Ellen Lyons. Sorry, I'm trying to change that name, but I am. I was just waiting to hear if there were updates later on in your meeting.
Okay.
So,
all right, terrific.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Right, and I'll just remind you that Adam is Nicole.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry about
that.
Thank
you
you
so much, Lauren. Okay, so just to go ahead and kick us off, as I said, we have just gained ownership of the Durkee farmhouse, and because we are newbies to try to figure out, well, now what do we do that we have acquired this home and 5 acres of land. And so I guess, Mark, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and sharing with us your thoughts, since I know that you need to get going pretty soon.
Thank you. And yes, I have another meeting that I have to be at 7 and have to prepare a little bit for it. So I'll need to leave about 10 before. When we were initially contacted about this, Alexis and I and our director of the housing division met and chatted a bit about what the opportunity might be. I looked at the site a little bit just on the aerial photographs and on the town's various GIS mapping to see what the potential was. And the bottom line is I guess the question is, what do you want to do with it? What is your vision for the site? Is your vision for the site that you want to have 2 affordable units? Because that's very different than saying we'd like to have X number of deeply affordable units, and we wouldn't mind seeing additional units constructed on the site that might be market units that might help to pay for it. Frankly, I'm not sure, but looking at the site, it looks like the stream valley comes down through the western side of it, and I don't know what the situation may be regarding wetlands, or if that's a perennial stream that we have a 200-foot buffer on. So there's a lot of questions, but the biggest question is, what does the town want to do with the site? Have you gone through a process to determine that? Because that will then more or less set a course as to how you might proceed. Is that about right, Alexis?
Great. Well, so to answer your question, no, tonight is actually the beginning of that, because the house was just acquired. And I know that there is great interest in trying to move this property along quickly. And so each of us on the trust, we will discuss our various ideas about what we would like to see, and then come to some agreement about what we think should be done. But I think regardless of what the end game is, there is still sort of the notion of, how does one even go about this? Because we've all been informed through our work on the action plan of understanding that there are various pieces to this. But I think the biggest one that everybody is questioning is, how do we even engage with folks to be able to assist from a technical assistance perspective, and then also from a funding perspective? Like, in general terms, what tends to happen?
If I could interrupt for a second, my thought all along has been that we'd try to make it into a house. There's a new septic system just below the house, the house site is quite constrained by the wetlands that you mentioned. It's a 3-bedroom system, so we're limited to, in terms of size of what we can put in the farmhouse. I think the starting point for me would be just, let's assume that we're going to make it into some kind of a 3-bedroom house. And how do we go about doing that, given that there's a building there? And we need to investigate the building and, find out if it's structurally okay and, that kind of thing. But is that a reasonable place to start?
Well, again, from a process perspective, if we used Bartlett's example, what would be the course of action to be able to engage folks from a technical standpoint and a funding standpoint?
Well, I'm personally thrilled to have the folks from Metro West Collaborative Development here, because I suspect that they may have a little bit more direct experience in actual construction. As I was talking with Alexis and Andrea earlier, a role that MAPC could assist you with would be the public process around, what does the town want to see happen here? But if in fact it is very constrained, there may not be a lot of choices. If it's a 3-bedroom septic system and there's no other place on the property for additional septic systems, then that's going to be very limiting. You might have a 3-bedroom house. You might consider whether or not you would want to have a 2-bedroom unit and a 1-bedroom unit somewhere on the site, and maybe have 2 affordable units. But I think that the financing might be challenging. Alexis, do you want to chime in here with anything?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think after the reason why Mark and I in our earlier discussion were focused on what the town wants is just that if what the town is interested in is, as Bartlett was saying, just rehabbing the existing house and, having one affordable unit on site, that's a very different thing than, and you'll need different experts than if you're talking about, we want to build maybe a dozen townhomes or something. There are developers that have expertise in very small scale development. Those are fewer and further between. And then there are developers that have expertise in, more moderate scale development. And so that I think, after kind of that initial, where are the wetlands, where can we even build? The first thing that I would suggest is talking to some developers. They're going to know is better, which it sounds like you're already doing since folks are here. But they're going to have a much better sense of, is financing even available for a single unit at a time? And I will say, just to I would love to hear what the folks from Metro West have to say. But before one last comment. If the town owns this land, and my understanding is the town would like to not own it once this project is done, that y'all would like to sell it. If that is the case, the disposition of the land will need to go through, we'll need to get town meeting approval. I'm not sure if you were aware of that, but so that just when you're talking about what would you like to see on site, it's a decision that will need buy-in from town meeting. If that impacts what you're thinking about, how you're pursuing whatever vision you opt to pursue. But again, I'd be curious to hear from the folks from Metro West, since they have the most on the ground experience about, how they approach a site, a blank site, or a site with a house on it.
And real quick, before we do that, I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Alexis, about it depends on the number. What's the threshold number when you said if there are a few units versus more units? Is there like a threshold number in your head?
It really depends. There are developers that are, like a Habitat for Humanity might be able to do like a one-off unit. There are examples of developers who specialize in that. Whereas, anything, a lot of the cutoffs are in terms of the available funding. The biggest source of funding for affordable housing is a program called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit. That really works best if you're talking like, at least 20 units. That doesn't mean that you can't do smaller. There are developers that do it, and there are dozens of funding sources available. It's just part of why I'm saying, is talking about the vision is, if you know that you want a larger build, if you know that you want to get, however many units of housing, that will say, okay, then that means we want a developer who is familiar with low income housing tax credits. If you really just want this to be one or two units, then what you need is a developer who's familiar perhaps with, a small scale home ownership development. And whoever you talk to now isn't necessarily going to be the developer who you have to be careful about how much you have conversations with someone, because there will have to be a public disposition process and RFP, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, that will have to comply with state law. But I think as a first step, just knowing, like, finding the right people to talk to, like going to, finding an affordable housing developer who does 100 unit buildings in downtown Boston isn't going to help you if you just want to build 2 units.
Right. Thank you very much for that further explanation. Great. So Stephanie, would you like to talk, or one of your other team members? Oh, you're muted.
You're right. Lynn, did you want to start off, since we were talking about feasibility and number of units and all that?
Absolutely, sure. I'd be happy to. And I can just quickly introduce myself. So I am Caitlin Madden, and I'm the Executive Director of Metro West Collaborative Development. Many of you might know my predecessor, Jen Van Kampen, who was with the organization for more than 15 years and departed in 2021 to pursue a career in nursing. So hello to all the new faces here, and thanks for inviting us. So I guess I completely agree with Alexis and Mark about the idea of, the town thinking about what is the vision for the site and what are the goals. And if it's okay with all of you, I thought I might talk through some of the specific examples of projects that Metro West has worked on in the past with other towns, just to shed some light on, the process and some of the things that were helpful along the way, and that might spark some ideas or questions from all of you. So, Anna, is it okay with you if I share a brief presentation?
Yeah, do you have a sense as to how long it is?
You can give me a time limit and I can talk quickly if you'd like.
Yeah, how about 10 minutes?
Okay, sure.
Great, thank you.
All right. And I'm not sure if you're the host, but if the host could give me screen sharing
Yeah,
abilities, that would be great.
that would be Marin.
We should be able to. Have you tried?
Yes, it says host disabled participant.
It says one at a time. Advanced sharing option. Oh, there you go. Now I found it. Okay. Okay, please try again.
Okay,
Excellent, thank you.
thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll go through this quickly. Again, I want to be respectful of people's time, but I'll just give you a brief overview of who Metro West CD is, talk through a bit about how affordable housing happens, and then cover a couple of our project spotlights, and then talk a little bit about how in our experience we've been able to bring the pieces together. So Metro West CD, we have a 25 town primary target area, and we focus on promoting affordable housing. And those efforts fall into three main categories. We connect people to it, we advocate for it, and we build it. We are a 32-year-old regional 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded in Watertown. Our offices are now in Newton. We are also a certified community development corporation. Also a certified community housing development organization from the West Metro Home Consortium. And we really see ourselves as a trusted, mission-oriented, skilled, and collaborative partner in helping municipalities execute on their goals related to affordable housing. So we currently have a portfolio of 110 units in Watertown, Norwell, and Medway, and 127 units in our pipeline. All of which are permanently affordable. And there's just a couple of examples here. In Medway, Massachusetts, we have Glenbrook Way Phase 2, which is 44 units, Passive House certified, and it's currently in construction. In Hudson, Massachusetts, we are working on 62 Packard Street, a former police station, where we're creating 100% affordable family rental units, 40 of them also Passive House certified and in construction. And we were also designated as the developer for the West Newton Armory, which is a historic adaptive reuse, which will also be Passive House certified. And we currently have our EOHLC funding award and are hoping to start construction next year. So kind of, the big picture of how does this very complicated process of affordable housing happen. And we tried to break it down into, a couple of steps. And as we walk through the examples of our work, we'll talk about how each of these steps came into play in each of those examples. So it starts with motivation and an idea. Then you move into feasibility around permitting, financing, political will, and then site control, design, permitting, financing, and then construction and lease up, and then you celebrate and begin again.
I don't think we'll be beginning again after this one.
I don't know. It might be so much fun that you can't wait to do the next one. So I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about Medway. And again, I'll try and kind of move quickly through this. So the motivation in Medway was the Affordable Housing Trust and a select board member who saw a need to provide truly affordable housing for families and seniors, and also a desire to play defense on 40B. So there weren't town-owned parcels that were appropriate for affordable housing development. So Metro West scouted for properties, privately owned properties with the trust for market acquisitions. We went through the process of determining feasibility, ultimately acquired the sites with funds provided by the Affordable Housing Trust, and moved through design and permitting. During that time, they decided they liked the project so much that we doubled it. We went from 48 units to 92 units, and ultimately got that approval. But all throughout, we had sort of, unwavering political leadership. So fast forward to today, Glenbrook Way is now a 92-unit, two-phase intergenerational campus. Phase 1 was completed in December 2022, and Phase 2 is in construction right now and expected to be completed early this year. Another development spotlight, and this is probably more relevant to the process you're going through now, because this was a town-owned site in Hudson. It was a vacant police station. It was near the school and surrounded by single-family homes, and had been vacant and became really an eyesore in the community. So there was a lot of motivation around creating affordable housing, and at the same time, demolishing a vacant and deteriorating municipal building. So the feasibility here, the town of Hudson engaged with Mass Housing through a technical assistance grant to fund the feasibility studies, to do some preliminary community engagement work, and to ultimately issue a request for proposals. So Metro West responded to that RFP. We were among 7 respondents, and we were ultimately selected as the developer. Fast forward to today, and we are in construction and creating 40 units of 100% affordable family rental housing available to households earning up to 60% of area median income. We started construction in September and are making great progress there. So just to talk, a little bit more about Metro West and what we bring. Again, we're a trusted collaborative partner, mission-driven. We provide real affordability, technical expertise. We also are able to bring in well-respected, highly skilled consultants, our architects, engineers, sustainability. We also are able to navigate complex permitting processes and complex financing. Our projects take about 11 different sources of financing, and it takes real expertise to understand how to access those funds, how to weave them all together, how to get approvals, to be able to execute on a vision. So just to dig a little bit deeper on kind of who does what. So, oftentimes the motivation and the idea, as it should be, is driven by local folks, people who live in town, who see an opportunity and want to create housing. And then moving into the site control, site feasibility, and request for proposals, it is very complex work and takes a lot of technical expertise. So that's kind of the moment when you would want to Metro West would recommend bringing in a consultant who has expertise in these stages of the process. Metro West, our real expertise is coming in during design, permitting, and financing, construction, lease up, and ultimately in operations. Once some of the initial feasibility work has been done, and then again, we all celebrate and begin again. I just quickly wanted to highlight why technical assistance is so important. As Mark and Alexis were touching on, setting goals is so important. Thinking about feasibility from a land use perspective, but also from a financial feasibility perspective. and really crafting a request for proposals that will meet the town's goals, but also ensure that you receive responses from developers, because you can spend a lot of time and put in a lot of groundwork into an RFP process and then not get any responses, which is a very difficult position to end up in.
So just real quick, I know that Mark needs to leave. Mark, did you have any other comments before you move off to your other meeting?
Just that this is a perfect example of the process, and MAPC may be able to provide you with some assistance in that section where you're talking about developing your goals, maybe doing site feasibility. We have some architects on staff. Alexis is one of them, and we can do pro formas to make sure that your goals are realistic and that you will therefore hopefully get responses when you issue an RFP, so that you're not trying to set a goal that isn't financially feasible for developers. And I would be glad to come back, and I'm sure Alexis would be, to come back and talk to you more. But one of the things that Alexis mentioned to me earlier is this isn't a quick process. It takes a while to line up the money. It takes a while to get the consensus from the municipality, because without consensus from the town, you won't get the approval at town meeting, and then you're dead in the water.
Yep.
So.
Great. Well, I can't thank you enough, each of you, for being here this evening. The big thing for us, as I said, is that we now will move on to have that discussion, and then I know we will come up with an idea or two to be able to flesh out a little bit more, and depending on the process, we'll then be in touch. I do think that you've given us a lot of good food for thought, and hopefully it is enough information for us to begin our conversations. And so thank you. So Caitlin, thank you so much. Stephanie, thank you for asking Caitlin to join us. And Mark and Alexis, very nice to meet you. And originally we engaged Mark because of some work that had been done on a historic home. So if we go down that path, we will be back in touch for that as well. So.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, actually, I had maybe one other thing to add that might be helpful for your process.
Thanks.
MHP is definitely a great source for technical assistance. 260 Foster is also on the Massachusetts Register of Historical Places, which opens it up to a whole other bunch of funding and assistance. One thing is the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund. It actually has an open application period right now with a deadline of March 15th. Pre-development activities are funded.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, you said that's the Massachusetts Project and Preservation Fund?
Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund.
Preservation Projects Fund. Okay.
It's through the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And pre-development activities are something that can be funded, and the funding award for that is between $5,000 and $30,000.
Terrific.
And one other thing I just wanted to add before we go, because I usually work with homeowners and do work as a monitor. And the true single family home is actually a rarity in affordable housing. And, it's understandable why that is, because it is difficult for that to be financially feasible. But, because so many of the affordable properties are either part of a homeowners association or a condo, those extra costs, there isn't a state law that caps condo fees. And for a lot of folks, that ends up being an additional expense that eventually makes the home unaffordable. in addition to property tax and everything else. So it's nice to offer a true single family home if that can be done. That eliminates, the homeowner association fees, I would think, unless, more properties are added to the land, and, certainly the condo fees.
Great. Well, thank you for all that food for thought. Really, really do appreciate your assistance. And I know that Maren says we have access to your particular services. So again, if we find ourselves in that position, we will be in touch. And if we need to go through an RFP process, then we'll do that as well. So thank you.
Right.
And again, we're happy to check in with you about the yellow font items, the visioning, the feasibility
Right.
studies, the RFP. That's so please feel free to reach out.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before you go? It's a 5-acre parcel, and there's no I don't think there's going to be a sewer there anytime soon, so we're limited by septic. But I've thought that it might make sense to break the house off onto an 1.5 acre parcel and try to develop the uphill part of the site. And would it make sense when we're starting to talk to developers to say that the field above the house, there's another 4 acres or so, that we would be looking also for some proposal to put housing there, and we might be able to put 4 or 5 units on that parcel.
I'll defer to the folks from Metro West, but just from my experience, I also previously worked for affordable housing developers. The more units you have, the easier it becomes, or I should say, the fewer units you have, the harder it becomes to develop. So if you are able to add more units, that only helps the prospects that it will actually happen.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you again for your sage advice. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
This evening.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of other guests that have joined. I see Fran and C. Parrots and also Marge. Good evening, folks, if you're joining us. So we also have Mark Rambacher, who joined us since we first got on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Matthew Nordhaus is the only member who is not able to attend this evening. So Bartlett, we can kick off the next part of our meeting. So for note-taking purposes, I know that if Lucia is looking at this, we started actually on item 2C as in cat. And I wanted to give an opportunity to Nicole so that we can go back actually and talk about item 3A and B, just so that she can go ahead and get on with her evening. Does that sound okay, Nicole?
Sounds great. Thank you. So I just have one thing to present tonight. We have LRAP 2, who is completing their 4th year in the program. So last year around this time, they were approved for an additional year because their financial circumstances had not changed, and the trust approved that. So I am seeking approval for another year for this participant. This is a 4-person household. This is a 1-income household. The annual income is $86,324, and their monthly rent is $1,850. And I do have just a little bit of information that I was able to get from Amy, who is our outreach coordinator who works with this family. This is a two-parent household with two children. One child is still in school. The other is considered an adult. The family is a single income home who has been struggling with various health issues as well as mental health expenses for private testing. All public benefits that the household is eligible for are being utilized. Additional time within the program would be beneficial in order to reduce their debt.
And so, based off the rubric that you come up with, or excuse me, never mind. This is fourth year. Never mind.
Hmm.
What
So this
question?
would actually be for their fifth year. This would be
Yeah.
seeking approval for the fifth year.
Members, what are your thoughts?
I would say I don't have a problem with that. We don't have anybody, they're not taking somebody else's spot. We have the money, we're not overtaxed by what we're spending right now, so we're here to help families survive right now, so I don't have a problem with that in the fifth year.
I would agree with Mark on that.
I would agree too.
Okay, so I'll play devil's advocate here. So according to the program, they're supposed to be on for 3 years and have a plan to transition off. They're already on for 4 years, going for a fifth. What is the plan to transition them off?
So this family receives, like I said, all of the public benefits that they're eligible for. They have been on public housing waiting lists since year one. And that's obviously not going to happen for quite a while. The goal for this fifth year would be for them to be able to pay down their debt and hopefully avoid any other additional medical bills so that they would be able to put the money that they're now spending on this medical debt towards rent to stay where they are.
But the medical debt doesn't affect them for whether they're eligible for the LRAP or not, correct?
No.
So even if they had no medical debt, we would still be having the same conversation?
Well, the medical debt is, where a lot of their income is going. So that's why.
Yes, but they're not eligible for the LRAP because they have medical debt. They're eligible for the LRAP because of their income. Is that correct? So
Correct.
even if they paid off their medical debt in year 6, we could be having this exact same conversation.
Well, if they paid off their medical debt, then more of their income would be able to go towards rent. So their circumstances would be different.
But they would still be eligible.
They would still be eligible. Yeah.
So then the question is, in year 6, if they had medical debt paid off, would we still be approving them? Because they could still apply. So I agree on one hand that there's nothing that says we shouldn't be approving this other than the policy that says they should only have for 3 years. So again, the policy says 3 years. So if it says 3 years, unless there's no one else that's there, that's one thing, but that's not what the policy says. So we should be following what the policy says, right?
Mark, I don't agree with you. I think we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. We set up.
There's no, that's not true. You have a policy to say how you behave.
Let's recall that you have updated the policy.
Yes, but we said, yeah, but there's circumstances. I mean, the only thing that we're saying is that there could potentially go on the long-term rental, the state rental assistance, right? That's what we're saying is their plan to get off of this. I'm just asking. I mean,
No.
I understand we should be giving them money, but the policy says one thing and we're doing something against the policy. So there's no point in having the policy if we're not going to follow it.
Okay, so Mark, let's hear what Angus has to say.
Angus,
There you go. Oh, you're muted still. There you go.
I'm more inclined to provide assistance, but I do believe the policy needs to be revised and updated. Each time we have a family in need who stresses the policy, I think that we should make some adjustments so that we become all-inclusive. It's not necessarily watering it down, but it's just taking in all the little vicissitudes and problems that come along with certain families. I mean, this family obviously doesn't look like they're going to get off of this, like Mark is saying, but then we shouldn't just ignore them or just not do anything. So we should support them, but then we should start at this point looking at avenues at which we can tweak the policy to become somewhat inclusive. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. I agree with Angus and Mark and everybody else. So it sounds like there's a motion that needs to be made so that we can approve this family, because the majority of members have indicated they would like to do so. And also we should add to our next steps that we address the timing policy at the next meeting, because we don't have that on the agenda to do for tonight.
I'll second that motion, I think.
Okay. All right.
Before we go all the way through on this, can I ask, if this is a renewal, why aren't all the renewals at the same time? Because just to take this one step further, we said we have the money to support this family, which I agree we do. But if someone came along tomorrow and wanted this, and we wanted the LRAP, and we gave it to this family for year number 5, what would happen if we didn't have the money to give to the family for year number 1? Because these renewals aren't coming up together. We couldn't necessarily kick this family off, right? If all of the applications were reviewed more or less closer together, we could, or how do we make these determinations?
I think I can answer part of that. So each applicant applies and is approved for the program at a different time. And so their years are up based on when they were approved. So there's no way to kind of do them all at once, because they're all coming up for renewal at different times based on when they were approved.
So so should we fix that problem? That say you're through a fiscal year and then we renew them again on the fiscal year basis? Because we can't, if all of these are coming up one by one, we can't, and we had more families that applied than we could fund, we have no way of evaluating them against each other.
Well, I think Maren can shed some light on that. First of all, we've never had more families than we could fund. I think when we originally started the Affordable Housing Trust and these programs, I think we budgeted $50,000 a year for the fund, and we've never come close to spending the $50,000 in any one year. So it's not like and thank God that we haven't had the demand that would tax the system. We've had a surplus every year, and I think Maren, you could, or Nicole, you can address that. I think that's how we started it. I think I was here when it started. I think Bartlett was here when it started. I think that's how we started. We've never reached our maximum. So I think, Mark, it's kind of a moot point the way you're looking at it. But I agree with you that rules are, we should absolutely address the rule, but I don't see it as a stumbling block to keep funding people that have been on the program, and that's what we're here for. But anyway, Maren, was I right in that? It was like 50 grand and we've never reached, or Nicole, was I right?
The easy way to look at it is you have funding for 20 slots, and right now we're at 13 or 14.
13.
13.
So to Mark's point, if we can then amend the motion for the next step to be not just to look at the timing, but also whether or not the applications should all be reviewed on a calendar year basis or fiscal year basis, whatever we decide. So does that make sense based off what you said? Susan, you're kind of.
How can we when they apply at different times? No, not
Right, no,
everybody-
I get that. I'm just simply saying that can be part of the discussion if we need to discuss it further. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can't, because we can give assistance for the rest of whatever the period is, right? And then you reapply.
Well, we can discuss that. I don't have a problem with continuing the way we've been going, just on the
Yeah.
anniversary basis.
My question is, if we could have the 20 families and this is the 20th, what happens when 21 comes in, right? That's the concern, right? When these, so.
Right, the trust has not had that conversation yet, whether you're looking to expand the program in the future or not.
Right. We can expand it. We have the money. We could vote to expand more money. So I think you're, I agree with Bartlett. Well, we've started this way. It's a taxing process for Nicole and the families that are applying for this. I think they're stressed out enough as it is. Let's just keep it the way it is. And, it's working well so far. And thank God it's only 13 families. And, I don't have a problem with keeping it, like Bartlett said, the way it is right now. And if you want to address the nuances of it at a later date about how many years and things like that, I'm good with that. But it's worked fine for 5 years. I don't think we should be changing it midstream now. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, so two different things here. So we need a motion to move the next step at the next meeting to discuss the anniversary basis and the number of years. So that's the first motion, right?
To update the policy, we don't need a motion to update the policy now, right? We just can do that.
No, to add it to the agenda for the next time, right? Okay.
We don't need a motion to add it to the agenda, do we? We
Okay.
can just do that.
Okay, we'll add it to the next meeting. And then we do need a motion to approve this particular family's funding for another year.
I'll make that motion. I make the motion. We approve them for their 5th year in the program.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, Sue,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
Mark Rambacher,
I'm going to abstain.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Mark Montanari,
Yes.
and Anna is a yes. So we have 6 and 1. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Nicole. Is there anything else you'd like to
Thank
share?
you. Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move back to our order of business on number 2 of the agenda, the Durkee Farmhouse. I wanted to just give everyone a quick update on where we are with it. I know we kind of jumped into the guest speakers, but that was because of the timing of when folks were available. So thank you for your flexibility. So the acquisition was completed on December 28th, and we paid $50. The deed has been recorded, and so there's a couple of next steps. The transfer agreement indicates that there's an agricultural preservation restriction, and if the trust recommends changing this, then the planning board needs to be engaged in order to make that change. That's one thing. The other thing the transfer agreement talked about was finding of the well, so that's something that would need to be done. And then the lien certificate, and this is a question for Maren, said the taxes were paid through the 28th, but it's not clear to me if the trust continues to pay taxes. I didn't think it did, but I just thought I would make sure.
That's correct. And that's why Town Hall was looking for the copy of the deed so that they could follow up and abate any taxes that were inadvertently charged after the town took possession.
Right. Okay, good. Good to know.
Mhm.
So thank you to Maren and other town folks who helped in that whole process, because it was done fairly quickly once things got rolling. So the other next step where we are right now is securing the site. And so 2 avenues, if you will. One is that our building inspector and highway department folks took a look at that. And so Maren, I just wanted to ask, do you have an update as to what they were thinking, or where we are with that?
Let's see, the building inspector and I spoke briefly about it. My suggestion was to ask the trust to approve up to, say, $1,200 in expenses to secure the site as town staff sees fit, or with maybe as town staff sees fit with approval of the chair. And that will allow expenditure of locks or plywood or whatever materials are necessary by town staff. And then I know, Anna, you have a little more to say about a possible different direction.
Yeah, so thank you for doing that. So 1,200 would be less than what we received. Flint and I, through conversations with the police department, they used a security firm. They came out and took a look at the property with us on Friday, and they provided an estimate to be able to do similar, change out some of the hinges in the doors, add padlocks, and this is 12 padlocks, 12 hinges. Then the plywood necessary to board up the windows from the inside, and then their labor and installation. So their estimate is around $3,200 to do all of that. So I think that's up to us to decide, do we want somebody to do this externally, or do we want the town to do it? I don't have a sense of timing from the town as to when they might be able to get out to do that work. Do you have a sense, Maren?
No, I have to say it depends on the weather, because DPW staff is taxed when the weather is bad. So.
Yep.
But looking at it the other way, when there's 1.5 feet of snow on the ground, it's hard for anybody to access the site to do any additional damage.
Yep, exactly. So when we went around, the folks from the security firm said, adding the padlocks over all the doors would be great, covering the windows, sealing up things like the bulkhead entry. And they also recommended getting solar lights to be able to put up around the home and around the barn, so that it can provide that additional sense of security, and that those would be fairly inexpensive, that can be just purchased. So that's the only other recommendation that came from them that I think would be helpful to the whole process. So what does everybody think? What should we do? Should we go through the security firm? Should we go through the town highway department with the building inspector?
So why don't we allocate the $3,200, and if the town can do it, we let them do it, or less?
Okay,
Is there?
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just, is there a reason not to do it that way? I mean, other than the security lights, is there something different that the town suggested than the security firm suggested?
Nope. Seems to be the same. Bartlett, were you going to say something?
Well, I haven't seen, did the town highway department, DPW, put in a written proposal?
No.
Or did they just say they'd secure it?
Just a quick back of the envelope estimate. And
okay, I mean, my inclination, the building's been empty and open for 10 or 12 years. And there's always a chance, but I'd be inclined to go with the to ask the town forces to do what they wanted to do.
Okay.
I mean, I think the 12 hinge hasps and 12 padlocks is, I don't know, it might be just, I mean, there's that many doors, but it just might be overkill considering the circumstances of the building.
Is that doing both the house and the barn?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the only other comment that I wanted to make is based off of having worked through the insurance process is that at some point the insurance company will want to do an inspection and we should have things buttoned up by then. So I don't know when they'll come out, if they're as slow to coming out as they were in actually creating the policy, it might be a while, but I just wanted to put that out there that we would want to try to get our town folks to work on this sooner rather than later, weather permitting, of course. So that seem reasonable to everyone? Okay.
Yes.
So I guess I'll take a motion to vote for the funding, and I'm happy to go ahead and make those approvals if you want to have me do it, or Bartlett or Angus or anybody who wants to do it. I won't have to be the one to do it.
Well, I'll make that motion to, as you said.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so we have Bartlett and Susan who are saying yes to $3,200 or up to $3,200. And then the town can go ahead and secure the site, and the funding will be approved by me. So we'll go ahead and take that vote. Bartlett.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Angus?
Aye.
Mark Rambacher?
Yes.
And Mark Montanari?
I wasn't there, but you're talking about money to secure the building, and I'll vote in favor of that. Yes.
And is a yes. Okay, so we're good to go there. Awesome, thank you. All right, so now let's get to the fun part. So I really appreciated that both Metro West and MAPC were here, because they did provide us with some good information and where their particular strengths lie. So I hope everybody thought about their homework, and that was to bring an idea about what to do with the site and the anticipated number of proposed units, who would be the target audience. And so what I'd like to do is just go around and have everybody, talk about their ideas for a couple of minutes, and then we can talk more about them. But I think it would be a good idea just to kind of get them all out on the table first. And Bartlett, you kind of got that started already. You said that you were thinking about perhaps breaking off some of the acres. Do you want to proceed and talk about your idea and the number of affordable units and who would be in them? In other words, who's the audience that would be in them?
Well, we are going to be limited by septic, so we're going to have to get some testing done to figure out how many bedrooms we can put on the site. I think the town law is that you can't have two septic systems on one piece of property, so we have to divide it. I'm thinking that we could probably get 4 or 5 units up there on one septic system. I think that's allowed, up on that, up above the barn, and we could either try to put the units in the barn, which I would prefer, or we could build new units, up in the field, and I don't know what would happen to the barn. It might get torn down.
Okay. And who would you envision being here? Like, who would be the audience?
Well, I would like to see it, all affordable. And I don't know how the ownership would work, but we could, with somebody owning it, we could get the Littleton Housing Authority to manage it, because they have the ability to do that and to use vouchers and other, they can manage it and fill it. There's a great need for family housing. There's a great need for other kinds of housing too. So, part of, the site is going to determine how many bedrooms we can put there, and we could talk about how to configure those in different size units.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of Bartlett before we move on? Does the Littleton Housing Authority actually own anything right now, or they just manage the properties?
They own Pine Tree Park, and they manage other properties, and the voucher system is either a person or a site gets a voucher. So you can have mobile vouchers that are attached to people, and you can have
So the housing
vouchers.
authority is responsible for all maintenance and.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the voucher, they don't necessarily own it. Those are privately owned, and the owner gets the market rent from the state, and the recipient, the renter, pays whatever the voucher says to. It's steeply discounted.
Okay.
Right. Who would like to go next?
I'll go
I'll
next.
go. Oh, go ahead.
All right. I think the first step we need to do with this property is figure out what the environmental impacts are. The reason that it was donated to the town was because it was of marginal use to the developer. That's why I didn't put housing on there. So we could sit there and want to put 4, 5, 10, 20 units on there, but if the ground's not going to support it, we need to have a realistic idea of what we actually have. So we need to, I know it was probably flagged for the wetlands when Durkee was laid out. Maybe we should get conservation involved and let them delineate or do a new delineation of the wetlands so we know what we're dealing with, because we can wish for all we want, but the ground is going to tell us what we can do. Mm-hmm. Having said that, if we do have some actual uplands that we can develop there, I would like to see, I don't think the house makes sense developing. I think the house makes sense selling it to somebody else as a 3-bedroom house and then using the proceeds of that to develop the rest of the land. I would like to see senior affordable housing out there. If we can put some townhouses out there or something like that for sale, units out there, someplace for the seniors to age in place to, that would be great. If we could get 4, 5, 6 units, that would be great. But I think it's all going to depend on what soils we have out there and what's already been done. There is a stream going through it. How much land is going to be left when the stream is taken into consideration, and that's going to dictate how many units we can have out there. So, but I would like to see it develop for senior affordable or affordable housing.
And when you say 4 to 6, Mark, you mean on top of the 3-bedroom house or in addition?
Correct. That's what I'm thinking. You know, the other problem that you have is there's no roadway there. The roadway hooks around right by where the house is. The rest of the property is behind other people's houses. So we have to be kind of cognizant of that and creative as to how we do it. And that's obviously the stream is going to impact that, and the wetlands is going to impact, what we can actually get out there. So I think we should start there so that we're not thinking we can put 20 units out there and we can get 2, So I don't know, but I think we need to have conservation take a good hard look and tell us what they think we can do.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right. I think, Mark, you were vying for the next to go.
Sure. I pretty much agree with what Mark just said, that I think we should sell the house. I don't think it has much value as an affordable property. It can only be really a single family 3-bedroom house, and it will cost a fortune to rehab that. I do think we should do the environmental study and figure out how many units we can put there. whether it's utilizing the barn or the land or both. That would be what I would suggest we do. The one part that I disagree with Mark is I think it would be better to make it straight affordable housing rather than senior affordable housing, because I think senior affordable housing would make more sense if we kept that closer to the center of town, whereas affordable housing near the train station and would make more sense to me. But other than that, I think I agree with most of what Mark said.
Okay, and in terms of the number of units that you would like to see there?
As
Again,
many as we can environmentally fit.
all right.
Which I don't think will be, I think that won't be all that many, but.
Susan or Angus?
Well, I must confess I wasn't at the last meeting and I haven't prepared this, but I'm more inclined to believe that we should certainly rehab the house if we can and have that as a centerpiece, and then possibly add more units so that we can attract builders who would be interested in assisting to make the place fully functional. But I'm a bit skeptical of the Affordable Housing Trust being able to run and manage this property. It's not something for us to manage. We certainly can build it and have someone else take over, or have a developer put certain as many units as they feel. I'm more inclined to go for something like a unit per acre and go from there.
Okay. And in terms of the individuals who would be living there, any particular audience that you're thinking about?
Well, I would think of, retirement age people. That's who I think will be most suitable to live there. I mean, I don't think younger people would want to live near the train station so they can commute.
Well, remember, this is across the street from the train station.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, well, then it can be a mixed use. Anybody really?
Anybody? Okay.
Yeah, anybody.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'll round up the ideas, and then we'll open it up as well to any of our guests who might want to chime in. So
Can I ask a question first?
Yep.
I'll give my opinions too, but
yes, I'm so sorry, Susan.
that's okay. That's okay. You're
you have the floor.
Lots of faces up there.
You have the floor.
I get it. That's fine. No, I agree with those. I think it was the two Marks who said to sell the house. Because I think rehabbing that house, and since already has a new septic system and could be a three bedroom house, that makes sense to be able to me to sell it. And then I think we're all jumping ahead of ourselves when we're talking about how many units we can get there. I think we do have to see, as Mark Montanari pointed out, what it can hold. What could we do? And then if units can go in, and it definitely can put in some affordable units, I agree that probably putting an emphasis on senior housing might not be as sensible, because keeping, as Mark Rombacher said, keeping senior housing nearer to the center of town, to me, makes more sense. And having families or young working people who may need a train station, that would be sensible. And I have a question when you were talking about the deed and the restrictions, and you mentioned the agricultural preservation restriction on the land, what does that mean for us? Anything, or can that be handled easily?
Mark, would you like, or Montanari, would you like to talk about that?
I believe when we deeded it for open space to the developer did it, we put it that a restriction on agriculture, so no more units could be built on it by the developer. Yeah, I would assume, and Myron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'd probably have to come back to the planning board to take the restriction off of it, so that we could actually add more units, but we put it on strictly so the developer couldn't add more units to it.
Okay, thank you.
Was I right, Myron? Was that a good guess?
Yeah, and actually there's not an APR, official APR. It's a planning board condition of approval.
Right.
So they would circle back to the planning board for, to release or to update that.
Okay, thank you. Because I was going to say, if there was an official APR, then we've got a whole different ballgame. Right. Okay, thank you.
Good question, Susan, and thank you for your input as well. So I was going to say that after the last, or after the senior housing meeting or event, I was speaking with someone who is from Acton, who asked about affordable housing for individuals with developmental disabilities. And so in speaking with him further about that, he actually had the idea that and I'm sharing it with you all through my discussion with him, he had the idea that if it's right by the train station, it allows young adults, 20s, 30s, to be able to live independently, have a mode of transportation, which is near the train station, and they have services in Acton, so the individuals would be able to get on the train, go one stop, and go to the services that they utilize. Additionally, if there was enough housing, so 3 to 4 individuals in the house, and perhaps the barn could be made into units as well for caretakers, that would be sort of like a enclave, if you will. And I know that the town received some kind of a proposal as well from a person in Lowell. I don't recall what the name of it was, but there is definitely a need for housing in Littleton for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's one of the reasons why I sent that article. It just so happened to come up last weekend. And so I just wanted to put that out there as the idea. So in this particular scenario, again, the number would be sort of like 5 units, and there could be builders involved who have done these kind of developments before. He mentioned one of them called Common Grounds that's out of Lowell. And so, yeah, so that's the one that I have to bring forward. And as has been said, first we need to find out about environmental. First we need to find out about what is even possible. And from this standpoint, I find it fascinating that, again, from an environmental standpoint, that's number one, but even with that, we're all still thinking much smaller numbers. We're not thinking anything huge. So,
Anna, can I address your project that you were just talking about? It's interesting you brought that up, because I actually built or helped build a project in Orleans for adult housing with adults with need, I guess is the best way to put it. And it was CPC funds for 3 or 4 towns. Maren can help me with this because your mother lives there, right? It was CPC funds from 3 or 4 different towns. A gentleman, took him 12 years to get it through, had a child with needs, And they created this process, and it's a house there. There are people that live there. They're independent living facilities. I think they have probably 16 individual units there. There's like 4 buildings of 4 people in a building. And it wasn't the only, it was a great project and it worked really well, but it wasn't cheap. It was probably $3 or $4 million by the time they were done because of all the infrastructure you need and all the, just that it has to be built obviously to handicap standards and everything else like that. So it was, the 4 cities and towns did it together. It was a great project. I think that's a great idea. The only issue I have with that is that we're all, we're all getting older. I want to harp on the seniors again, only because they've supported this town for 50, however long they've been here. They got the big houses. They have nowhere to downsize to. I think we owe it to the seniors that are in Littleton first to try to come up with housing alternatives for them before we start conquering the world and taking on everybody else. But I think it's a great idea. My first priority would still be seniors or Littleton seniors or affordable housing for Littleton residents. So anyway.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, Mark, and I really think that that's great that you have had that experience in being able to develop something like this. I think from what we heard earlier from some of the members is that senior housing is perhaps preferable to be somewhere closer in to the common, closer into town. So that's just what I heard from the folks.
I want to remind everybody that there's going to be a dedicated shuttle service from the center of town to the train station. So where this is located probably is not that big a point anymore. It's feasibility and viability, and I've said it all along. You're not going to get affordable housing or senior housing any cheaper unless the town has something in the game, and already owning the land is probably the best reason that we could probably do something senior or affordable or a combination of both, because we're going to make it that much cheaper. And if we sell the house and get a house lot, $200,000 for that to put in the kitty, we can maybe do something that truly is senior or affordable or both. So that's just my take.
Yep.
Good point.
So I'd like to open it up to our guests, Marge or Fran, see Parrots or Mel, if anybody has any thoughts on what we've been talking about, if you have ideas about what you'd like to perhaps have us consider there. Nope. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, Anna, I loved your idea. That's all I wanted to say. I think that's really a great way of thinking about it. But of course, senior housing is always important as well.
Thank you. All right. So as we talk about this, and we heard it today from our guest speakers, that is that depending on what the idea is that we want to pursue, different folks would need to be engaged. I wanted to bring up real quick item 2E, which is MAPC's Technical Assistance Program application. So based off of the ideas that we discussed, would any of them be viable for TAP funding? So this is an application that I sent, or Marin or Lucia sent out, I think yesterday. There's a fairly close-in deadline, but if we think that we have an idea that we would like to start with, we would certainly be able to draft something up over the next couple of weeks to send out. And so from what I've gathered from everybody is definitely no more than 5 is the number, unless, we can fit more. But that environmental impact issue is really huge. And I'm just wondering, is CONSCOM going to be able to do this, or would we actually need an external support to do that?
I can certainly ask the question, for, wetlands delineation, what the most recent one is and what it would take to update that. I'll check with the Conservation Department for an answer for you. I would suggest that we also, reach out to, the engineer for Durkey Farm Estates, as, Brian Goodrow would have a lot of background information on the site. He might have some insight on, why that particular 5 acres was set aside as and not developed.
Okay.
Good.
Go ahead, Bartlett.
Well, yeah, I mean, assuming that that stuff turns out well, then the next step would be to get a septic engineer kind of person in there to do some test bits.
Well, I didn't Durkey Farms, didn't they do a bunch of testing, and that's why we finally have the 3-bedroom system where we have it. So they probably have done a fair amount of that already. We can at least ask.
We can ask
Mr. Guthrie what he can share with us. I'm sure he'd be happy to give us all the information that he has, or the engineer.
Yeah, I would suggest, between Dave Guthrie and Brian Goodrow, we might be able to gather quite a bit of information, at least to give us some direction.
Terrific. So can you ask that as well, Myron?
Certainly.
Terrific. Thank you. So with that said, do you think it's premature to try to apply for any TAP program right now, or any TAP funding? I don't know how to talk about it. Funding program. What do you think, Myron? You're the person who has been doing these for so long. What do you think?
MAPC has a lot of expertise, but pre-construction, I'm not sure they would be the ones to ask. And it's MAPC staff time that we're applying for through TAP. So
I mean, my take on that is that the deadline to apply is January 12th, and I don't think we're going to be ready to send anything in 3 days.
And historically, it is kind of a running program. So
Right.
if they don't become fully subscribed, they leave it open. So if we do come across something, it's certainly it might still be an option after this initial deadline.
Yep. Great. Well, it's good to know that those kind of programs exist, and that they could potentially be available in the near future for us. So based off of these ideas that everybody has, just to reiterate, we need to get that environmental done first and understand more about the septic. And do you want to have another meeting about this? Do you want to be able to discuss these ideas a little bit more now? What are your thoughts?
I don't think we can do anything till we know what we have out there. I think we all have an idea of our best wish right now. So maybe we get some more data and then put it on either next month's agenda or the one following that to kind of figure out how many units, where we're at, where the wetlands are.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think I agree with Mark. Try to get as many units as we can, but it's going to be dictated by what the soils are and what the wetlands are out there.
Yep. All right. Okay, so that will be our next step, and then we can continue. Also, I wanted to ask, I know that Susan, you had the original goal on this one, on Durkey Farm, and I just wanted to ask if you would like to consider leading this project.
No, thank you. I'll be fast with that one.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. Well, if anybody would like to take this on as a project lead, please, speak up. Let us know.
I can make some phone calls. I'd like to talk to Mr. Guthrie about it.
Okay. Yep. Mr.
Maren,
Guthrie,
if I
by
can
the
get-
way, still needs to get some items out of the barn, so he's got a deadline, and I think you were asking about that, Bartlett.
Yeah, so Maren, if you could give me the engineer's phone, I'll contact him, and I have a question. Has Mr. Guthrie responded to the request to him to get his stuff out of the barn? Out of the, you know,
Yeah, and it's not Dave's stuff, it's his business partner, Chris Federal.
okay.
Well, I had
Do
copies.
you think Mr. Guthrie has communicated with Mr. Finneral?
I don't know at this point. But when last time I talked with Dave Guthrie, he offered that he's always available for copy to talk with any of the committee members, and so he'll be great for advice.
Okay.
I haven't found the correct communication method for getting a hold of Chris or getting a response from Mr. Federal.
Okay.
Go
Oh,
Bartlett.
I don't want to take the point on it, but I'll help you whatever you need, Bartlett.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bartlett and Mark. Okay. All right. So that was the end of topic number 3 then. So great. I mean, progress, right? I mean, we're talking about it. This is real. We're actually doing something with that property. So I think it's exciting, right? Come on. Let me see some smiles.
It is. It is.
All right. Got a smile from Maren. That's important. All right. So let's move on to item number 4, which is the action plan final review. So David, look at it. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there any comments, changes, anything we need to know about?
No.
Angus, you're muted.
So I want to commend you, Anna, for the tremendous amount of work that went into putting this together. You've only been chair for less than 6 months, and it's almost like years for the amount of work that's come out of the trust. So I thank you for spearheading this, but certainly this is a very important document, and it captures everything that the trust has done for years. There's just a few typos I saw there. I'm just going to have to look them up, and we can handle them by email.
That sounds
But
great.
yeah, job well done.
Well, everybody input to the document, so thank you all. I mean, it really is the work of the trust over the last 5.5 years since it's been in process. So, yep, just tied it all together. So with that, then if everybody is okay with the typos, as Angus pointed out, does anyone want to make a motion then to accept the document? Angus, okay.
I so
Second?
move.
All right.
Second.
All right. So Angus and Mark Rambacher. All right. So all those in favor of accepting this document, and then we can talk about next steps. So Bartlett,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Angus,
Aye.
Mark Rambacher,
Yes.
Mark Montanari,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. All right. So we got everybody. Thank you. Thank you all for all of your input, all of your work. So in terms of the next steps, Mark and I had an opportunity to speak with new town administrator Jim Duggan this afternoon, and so I mentioned it to him, and so we'll get him a copy as well. But the plan really should be shared, and I think we need to share it with Select Board, FinCom, and CPC. What do you think?
I don't think it would hurt if everybody saw it.
No.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get that out there, and if they wish to meet with us, specifically CPC, because we would like to be able to get some kind of a formalized agreement in place so that our method of funding doesn't get challenged by FinCom. I think that would be a good thing. So we'll go ahead and get that sent out to everybody. Marin, is that something that you want me to draft an email to go out to everybody and then you send it out, or do you want to draft the email?
Either way works for me. Just let me know.
Okay. How about I draft something and then you edit, add to it, whatever?
Happy to.
Okay. So for the next meeting, one of the things that I think it would be a good idea for us to get into the mode of doing is talking about, okay, so for the next meeting, which of our strategies are we going to be working on? And so clearly we're working on this one. We will also be working on sharing this out with everybody. And then we will also be potentially having meetings with other groups if they would like us to. But what else out of our strategy do you think we should touch base on for the next meeting?
I think funding is important. So the funding bit funding takes a long time to put together. So perhaps maybe that's something we should start early on.
So exploring the different funding sources.
Exactly.
Especially as it seems like whatever we do, it's going to be small, on the smaller side. Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
if we're going to if we agree we're going to dispose of the house, should we start with that separately? Or do we need to come up with the parcel holistically?
I don't think we want to dispose of the house till we know what we're doing with the rest of it, because we don't know what the land configurations and things like that and the septic. And I mean, I agree we should be looking at them separately, but I don't think we're ready to separate the total discussion yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I agree with that. Personally, I think we need to work on disposing of the house as soon as possible, if that's what we're going to do.
Yes.
Because it's just a liability for us. So
I agree with that. I think, yeah, once we come to that, finalize that decision, sooner is probably better than later.
Yes. I think in that we all agree. The sooner the better.
Yep.
All right. Great. So that's item number 5. In terms of item number 6, our project updates. So Matthew Nordhaus is not here this evening. So I asked him if he had any update to provide, and he said that there was no update. So I feel like we could be doing more on this particular one, and I'm just wondering, I did ask him whether or not he wanted somebody else to take the lead on this, but he didn't respond. I just wanted to put it out there. I mean, do we want to have somebody else working with him on this so that we can try to get some more momentum going? It just feels like it's languishing.
So I would think that now that we're going deep into budget process, his time is going to be even, well, it's not going to get any quieter for him. But now that there is a assistant town planner and who's learning a lot of new things, if Mark would be willing to work with me, or whoever would be willing to work with me on it, maybe I can help push it across, push it to the next step.
You said Mark.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Matthew.
Okay.
Wrong M.
I was gonna say, you scared me, Myron.
I was hoping she was referring to you.
There you go.
Okay, and I can certainly make that overture to him, so let's see what he
Yeah.
does. Okay, great.
Let's see what happens.
Great.
I could try to call Habitat for Humanity and see first where they think they are on the Tehadawon project, and also ask them if they'd be interested in looking at the Durkee farmhouse, because that's a possible avenue.
Was everybody think that good?
Yeah, I think that Matthew already has made several contacts with Habitat.
He has.
I believe so, but let's find out.
Yeah, Bartlett,
Okay.
let's just hold off, because I think let's just
Okay.
find out for Matthew, and that way we don't have too many people contacting Habitat, and they're then wondering, well, what's going on? Who do I really talk to?
I have a question though regarding Habitat. If they were involved in the Durkee Farm project, in what capacity is it to build something new, or is it to rehab the old farmhouse?
They do rehabs. So that's what I would ask for. I mean, there would have to be an investigation. You know, structurally, it may turn out that it's not as solid as it looks. So again, we don't know what would happen, but
I
they
don't know how
do.
it couldn't be as solid as it looks, Bartlett. It doesn't look very solid.
Hey, shut up.
They're friends. They can do that to each other.
Yeah.
If it looked worse than if it was actually worse than it really looked, it would have been on the ground already.
No, it's just the kitchen, the ceiling in the kitchen that is structurally unsound. And the first
floor
floor.
joists. Yeah.
So,
And
Yeah, I mean, we
the
really,
fire damage and yeah.
it's one of the reasons why we want to secure it, right? We just don't want anyone going in there who could then unintentionally, injure themselves.
yeah.
So, okay, so I will touch base with Matthew on that. And Maren, I presume there's no update on Dean Lane.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we're up to number 7. 7A, which is any input from folks? Anything else that you would like to talk about related to affordable housing?
I have one thing, which when we had the meeting about affordable housing, and we had the seniors and the representative from Lapoli and all of that. And I mentioned at the time that we could maybe do another follow-up meeting that had to do with getting a financial expert to talk about financial aspects of downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to Nicole about it, and she's been trying to find someone who would be able to do that kind of presentation. And I'm throwing it out to everybody here. Does anyone have any suggestion of a financial person who could really explain to seniors that the whole idea of financial downsizing? Because so many people in town think they want to sell their house, get a big chunk of money, and then they want a condo. They don't want an apartment. They want to go buy something else. Smaller, but buy something. And in some cases, that isn't affordable for them. really. And I've talked to a couple of people, and they keep suggesting people, but they're real estate. They're not a financial person. They weren't what I had in mind. So I'm just asking if anybody has any suggestion of somebody who might be able to do that kind of a presentation. Please let me or Nicole know.
Yep.
That's it. I know it isn't strictly to do with affordable housing, but it came up at that meeting. So
Okay, yeah. We'll definitely think, yeah,
it's not an easy topic to find someone who can,
right.
you get a financial advisor, but they want to talk to an individual person and say, well, this is your circumstances. And that's not what we want. I don't know. Maybe it was a pipe dream of mine. So
Nope, we can certainly keep thinking about that some more. I do think that each person's situation is different.
exactly.
As a result of that, I think part of it is not putting anyone in an uncomfortable situation where they perhaps are talking about their financial situation. And early on, what I had talked about with Kim Albertelli was maybe we could have like 4 different scenarios that are kind of typical, if you will, but it didn't feel like that session that we had last time was the appropriate place to do that.
Right.
So perhaps that's another way to do it, is kind of generalize. Here are 4 different potential scenarios, and here's what the financial situation is if the one-on-one isn't something that's workable. So, okay.
So, I have a couple of questions on this for Susan. Have you reached out to like estate planners?
Well, yes, but again, anyone that I haven't done a lot of reach out, but anyone I have talked to, they're viewing it more like we just said. It's an individual decision, but maybe like Anna just said, to say to them, well, couldn't you come up with 4 scenarios and use that idea?
And have you reached out to like the Mass Council on Aging or anyone in that office?
No, Nicole has, I believe. I will double check with her, but I know she's been investigating from other COAs that may have done similar presentations, but hasn't come.
Okay, I will probably run into them next week at the MMA conference, and I'll ask them if they have anyone. And I assume there's a budget we can actually pay someone to do this. We're not necessarily asking them to volunteer. I just don't know if we have an idea how much we're willing to spend.
Okay.
Well, how about we see if there's anybody and ask them what their fee is?
Right. If they're financial planners, they should pay us and not we pay them.
Yeah, typically, yeah. So
That was off topic.
because ultimately, if they're good, then people will want to use them. So that's sort of the way I think it typically works. But okay, great. Well, thank you, Susan. I just wanted to ask for my input, if there isn't any other input. What did folks think about some of those articles that I sent out? I hope you were able to find them, open those links, or find them online. I know I found it interesting that Lab 9 Modular is here in Littleton, and I wanted to ask Maren if you've had an opportunity to talk with them at all about housing.
Yes, been trying to connect tech engineering, well, Rick Freiberg with them as well.
That would be great. And in terms of just being able to talk about senior housing, like, do they have to build, big monster condo units, or could they literally build, as we're talking about Durkee, could they literally build 3 units out there at a fraction of what it would cost to build from scratch?
So the Clarendon Street project site, I think if you just Google Clarendon Street, Somerville, It used to have a lot of information on the apartment sizes, and they're really quite small. As far as could they don't build on site. They only build, well, Lab 9 only builds in the warehouse at 53 Air Road. And then the units get put together side to side and stacked. In the Somerville case, Clarendon Street case, it's well over 100 units. If I recall correctly, 163, I think was the number. So it's, yeah, and I don't know what their scale is on the other end, on the small end, but you would still need the superstructure to slide these apartment units into.
So it's almost like puzzle pieces where they come in with the puzzle pieces and then they put them onto the board, so to speak.
Yeah, 3D version of that. Yeah.
3D version of that. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's really helpful. The other article I found interesting was about the manufactured homes, and I didn't know if at any point in Littleton's planning board history whether discussions have happened about manufactured housing.
So it's been a topic of discussion in building world, and it's not it's building code issue. It's not zoning issue. And by that I mean that there's nothing you can do, either positive or negative, in zoning that would either support it or take away from property owners' ability to use modular construction. It has been used several locations in town. Some of it's just modular built instead of stick built.
Early on, back in the 60s, we had prefabricated houses. Apple Dior, some of the houses down in Apple Dior were done prefabricated, where they were brought in on trailers and dropped off on the sites and stuff like that. So as Myron said, I don't think we have the ability to say, no, you can't do it. It's just whether it's feasible or not. And there are some nice units out there, and people are starting to use prefabricated housing. And as you said, Anna, it's in cubes. It's not just one house. You like you see in the highway, you see half of one, and then right behind it's the other half. They don't necessarily do it that way. They do it in quadrants, or like they build ships now. They build it in pieces and then put the pieces all together. That's what you're seeing now for modular homes, prefabricated, things like that.
Well, it just seemed like between the two articles of the Lab 9 modular and then the manufactured housing, that if there was a piece of property, again, going to one of our strategies of trying to identify town land, is that something that we could work toward? Because that type of housing is so much less expensive. I mean, one of the articles talked about manufactured housing ranging from $89,000 to $249,000 versus the other article that talked about the cost of housing for new units is $500,000 to $600,000. So it's just another mode of housing that makes a lot more sense, especially for what we're doing here. So just wanted to see if there are impediments.
Yeah, and I would suggest that during the process of finding the developer to work with, probably the RFP process, then you're getting responses. You make sure you target developers that are, would do modular type construction. That way you can find out if you get either more units or less expensive construction through that process, because they're the ones with the expertise. They're the ones who can decide what fits for a particular site that we're looking to have developed.
I mean, there's an access issue. You have to have a site that you can get a semi-trailer and a huge crane in.
Yeah.
But and you save a lot in time, I think. I mean, it's a much faster process, but the amount of materials is about the same, and I mean, you're working in a factory instead of outdoors, but I think the major savings is in construction time.
Yep. Exactly. Okay. Well, more food for thought. So, all right. Anything else on that? In any of those articles?
I looked at the Norfolk article that you sent. I thought was kind of interesting. That's a whole additional program that we don't have. Retire in place assistance. The Affordable Housing Trust in Norfolk provides money to homeowners to assist the assist to adapt the primary residence for whatever needs to be done for elderly housing. The owner has to be 65 or over. The income has to be, and this is in Norfolk, under 50% of the local AMI. And there's a bunch of things like that, but they give away $5,000 to homeowners who need work done on their house and are needing help to do it. So that, I think, is a program that we could think about if we find that that's a need in town.
Well, and I think Bartlett, that goes to your number. What number is that?
Am I getting ahead of myself?
Well, no, you're actually aligned with yourself. Isn't that fabulous?
Oh my
I
God,
think
this
it's
never happened before.
It's strategy 4.1, promote programs aimed at keeping residents in their homes. So, Maren, you're the one who found this, right? The Norfolk one. And so if that's possible, how is that different? Because I think we had talked about it before and we said we couldn't use funds, CPC funds, because it was for a personal home. But
And right, that's
slightly different. Yeah.
Right, that's exactly the question I was coming up with. Is this public funds? If it's public funds, is it CPC funds, or are these private funds that are being used for this grant program? So that would be great to figure some of that out.
Bartlett, do you have bandwidth to check into that some more?
I could, yeah, there's a phone number on the website. I could call them and ask.
Yeah.
But I think support of affordable housing is an elastic term. I think that if you say that you're supporting individuals, I just don't know what the legal definitions are of support, and whether you are supporting a building or you're supporting a person.
Yeah, we could go back to Stuart then and ask him for.
I mean, I could ask Norfolk how they get away with it, or what their logic is, and what their source is. I mean, they may have a huge other source of money that is not CPC. So
I will ask that we add that to the next agenda so that you can report back anything you might learn. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that same article, you had sent it out, and then Liz sent it out too to the COA board. And she was definitely feeling that there was a use for it if it could happen, but that, yes, there was need in town, that there are families or seniors who could use some help in maintaining their homes in some way. So the need's there and it's worth exploring. I was going to bring that up as the article that caught my attention too.
Yeah, I really love that idea.
And I know that Nicole's been talking about it too. And we've talked about it as a trust that gives some help for some small repairs or whatever.
Yep.
To keep people in their homes.
Great. Alrighty, so we're to the end. So just wanted to say that I was informed from our town accountant that the Affordable Housing Trust has been part of the annual town audit since the beginning. Doesn't sound like anybody was aware of that happening, so I will be asking her to get us the reports from the past years. And then under item number 8, minutes to the meeting. I know that we were using a different platform for recording the video last time, and so the first part of the video wasn't captured, so that's why the notes were, or the minutes were sent back out again. Any comments on those? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Susan. So all in favor of approving the minutes of December 12th, as amended due to the video, not capturing, Bartlett,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Mark Montanari,
Yes.
Mark Rambacher,
Yes.
Angus,
Aye.
and Anna is an aye. So those are approved. Thank you. And so now let's talk about our next meeting. Typically, we don't meet until the 3rd Tuesday of the month. So that would be Tuesday, February 20th, 6:30 p.m. That is school vacation. I don't know if that affects anyone.
Not anymore.
Been a long time.
So that happens to be 6 weeks away because we're early on this one and January is a long month. So are we good with 6 weeks or do we want to make something earlier?
6 weeks is fine with me.
We think that's okay? That gives lots of time to be able to find out more on the environmental stuff. So we can hopefully get a lot of stuff wrapped up in those 6 weeks then. We'll plan on it. All right, 6 weeks, February 20th, 6:30 p.m. Be here or be square. Haven't heard that one in a while, right?
Nope.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. Motion to adjourn.
So moved
Second.
by Angus.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Stay warm.